Revenge Story with Anjo.
Margaret Ellis lived alone in a small terraced house on the edge of Brighton, a place where seagulls screamed louder than the church bells and the sea air carried the scent of salt and rust. At 67, she liked her quiet routines: tea at 6, a walk by the pier, and a crossword before bed. Her son, Oliver, lived in London with his wife, Clara, the kind of woman who could turn a supermarket run into a fashion event. To everyone, they seemed the perfect couple. To Margaret, they were her pride and joy. Every month, Oliver told her he'd been transferring £3,000 into her account. "Just to make life easier, Mum." But her life hadn't been easy at all. Her fridge was often empty, and her heating barely worked. That Mother's Day morning, Oliver arrived with lilies and a hug that smelled faintly of expensive cologne. "You look well, Mum," he said warmly. Margaret smiled, though her jumper was worn thin at the cuffs. "Keeping busy as always." Over tea, he added casually, "Clara's been handling the transfers. I hope the money's helping." Her spoon froze halfway to the cup. "The transfers?" she asked softly. "Yes, $3,000 each month. Clara said she's been sending it straight to your account." Margaret forced a nod. "Of course, dear. It's been helpful." That night, as the wind rattled her windows, she opened her banking app. Balance: £37.62. Not a single transfer. Not even one. Her heart thudded quietly. For months, she had lived on the kindness of neighbors and tins from the church pantry. Still, she didn't cry. Instead, she reached for her old leather notebook, flipped to a blank page, and wrote 3 words: "Find the truth." The next morning, she sat by the window watching rain streak the glass. "If Clara's been lying," she whispered, "she's not stealing money. She's stealing trust." 2 days later, she dressed neatly in her wool coat and took the 9:05 bus into town. At the Barclays branch on West Street, she smiled at the young teller and asked for a statement. The girl frowned at the screen. "Mrs. Ellis, there haven't been any deposits from Mr. Oliver Ellis for 8 months." Outside, the drizzle had turned to steady rain. Margaret sat on a bench under her umbrella, unfolding the printout. Blank lines. No transfers. No mistakes. Just silence where help should have been. "Oh, Clara," she murmured. "You clever little liar." She took the next bus home and stopped at a stationery shop. She bought a small black notebook and a fountain pen, the kind her late husband had once used. That night, she began writing. October, no deposit. November, new handbag. December, hope you're keeping warm, she said. Each page became evidence. Each word a quiet act of rebellion. Margaret didn't plan revenge. She planned truth. Lies, she knew, always left footprints. You just had to walk slow enough to see them. The following week, a sleek, white Audi pulled into her driveway. Clara stepped out in a cream coat, hair styled in soft waves, carrying a bouquet of tulips. "Margaret, darling," she sang. "Thought I'd surprise you." Margaret smiled politely. "How kind. You must be busy." "Always," Clara said with a light laugh. "Oh, and about your allowance, I'll bring the cash next week." "I just forgot the envelope." "Of course," Margaret replied. "Next week, then." She watched Clara walk back to her Audi, pretending to rummage through her handbag. When the car disappeared down the street, Margaret whispered, "You just confirmed it." She opened her notebook again that evening and wrote, "Visit. White Audi. Said next week. No envelope. Perfume. Dior." Then she drew a small beside the entry, her silent way of marking a lie. Days passed, then weeks. No envelope. No transfer. Just new photos on Clara's social media. Lunches in Mayfair, spa days, a diamond bracelet gleaming on her wrist. Margaret stared at those photos not with jealousy, but with focus. She noticed the timing. Every time Oliver's salary came in, Clara's luxury outings followed. One morning, Margaret decided to call Oliver's office. "Good afternoon," she said gently when the receptionist answered. "Could I speak to someone in accounts, please? It's regarding a small personal matter." A few moments later, a calm voice replied, "James Parker speaking." Margaret took a breath. "Mr. Parker, "This is Margaret Ellis, Oliver's mother. I believe you handle payroll?" "Yes, ma'am," he said kindly. "Is there a problem?" "I'm not sure," she replied. "Oliver mentioned that funds have been sent to me monthly, but I've seen nothing. Could you check?" There was silence, then the clicking of a keyboard. "Mrs. Ellis," he said carefully, "the records show consistent transfers to an account under the name M. Ellis, but the address attached isn't yours. It's listed as 12 Haversham Crescent." Margaret's lips tightened. Clara and Oliver lived at 12 Haversham Crescent. "I see," she said calmly. "Thank you, Mr. Parker. You've been very helpful." That night, she placed her notebook on the kitchen table and stared at the empty chair across from her, the one her husband used to occupy. "You tell me to stay calm," she whispered. "And you'd be right." She began a new entry. 8 transfers, same pattern, same date. Address: Haversham Crescent. Recipient: M. Ellis. Signature forged. Then she added another line beneath it. "Truth doesn't need anger. Just patience." By the end of that week, she had her plan. She invited Oliver and Clara for dinner, a quiet Sunday roast, she said, to celebrate spring and family. Clara accepted immediately. "We'll bring dessert," she chirped. Margaret smiled at the phone. How lovely. Something sweet to end the evening. Sunday came golden and still. Margaret roasted lamb with rosemary, baked potatoes crisp at the edges, and lit the candles she'd been saving for Christmas. When the couple arrived, Clara looked radiant in a pale blue dress, her diamond bracelet catching the light. Oliver kissed his mother's cheek. "You've outdone yourself, Mum." Dinner was pleasant at first, polite laughter, stories about London life, Clara bragging about her upcoming charity gala. Margaret listened quietly, her eyes kind but calculating. When dessert came, warm apple crumble, she asked softly, "Clara, dear, remind me, when do you usually send the transfers?" "The 10th of each month," Clara said smoothly. Oliver frowned. "The 10th? That's odd. I thought it was the 15th. Clara blinked. "Oh, right, yes, sometimes the 15th. Depends on the bank." Margaret smiled, folding her napkin. "Strange how banks change their calendars, isn't it?" The air shifted. Oliver looked from his wife to his mother. Clara laughed a little too loudly. "Well, I suppose as long as it reaches you, that's all that matters." "Indeed," Margaret said gently. "And if it doesn't, I suppose I'll find out soon enough." Clara's smile faltered. Margaret leaned back, calm as ever. "Now, how about some tea?" That night, after they left, Margaret opened her notebook and wrote a single line. "The trap is set." Then she underlined it twice. She slept peacefully for the first time in months. 2 weeks later, she sent out invitations for a community supper at St. Luke's Hall. Everyone believed it was a charity event to support elderly residents. She invited Oliver, Clara, the vicar, and James Parker from Oliver's office. She even arranged a small display table marked "Donation Records." The evening arrived warm and bright. The hall glowed under string lights. Clara, as expected, arrived early in a white blazer and gold heels. "You're such an inspiration, Margaret," she said sweetly. "Giving back at your age, truly remarkable." Margaret smiled. "Oh, it's nothing, dear. Just paperwork and faith." Dinner went smoothly. Roast chicken, laughter, polite applause. But when dessert ended, Margaret stood at the front of the room. "Before we close," she said, "I'd like to share something personal." She nodded toward James Parker, who stepped forward with a sealed envelope. "Inside are the records of 8 transfers. Funds my son sent in love and trust." Oliver opened the envelope, confusion spreading across his face. "These are my transactions," he murmured. "But this is a Mum's account." The hall fell silent. Clara's smile froze. "There must be a mistake," she said, voice trembling. James shook his head. "No mistake. The account belongs to you, Mrs. Ellis. The signature on the authorization is forged." Gasps echoed through the room. Oliver stared at her. "You forged Mum's name?" Clara's voice cracked. "I just borrowed it. I was going to pay it back." Margaret's voice was calm but firm. You didn't just take money, Clara. You took the trust that built this family. The silence that followed was thick, final. Clara stood abruptly, grabbed her bag, and fled the hall, heels echoing against the tiles. Weeks later, an investigation confirmed everything. Clara had been rerouting funds for months, masking her spending as family support. The police called it financial fraud. She was ordered to repay £24,000 and lost access to all of Oliver's accounts. The day of the hearing, Margaret sat quietly in the back of the courtroom. Clara looked smaller than before, her expensive clothes suddenly meaningless. When the judge read the verdict, Margaret didn't smile. Justice wasn't joy. It was balance. Afterward, Oliver approached her outside the courthouse, his face pale. "Mum, I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," she replied softly. "Just learn." The weeks that followed were silent between them. Then one rainy evening, a knock came at her door. Oliver stood there, soaked and remorseful. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for believing what I wanted, instead of what was true." She stepped aside. "Come in, love." He sat at her table, the same place where truth had once been written in a black notebook. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. Margaret poured him tea. "Forgiveness isn't forgetting," she replied. "It's remembering without bitterness." In time, Oliver began helping her at the local community center. Together, they created a small program for seniors, teaching them how to manage finances and avoid scams. They called it Silver Trust. "It's your legacy," he told her once. She smiled.
"No, love.
"It's yours." Months passed. The center grew. Margaret found herself surrounded by people who, like her, had been betrayed but refused to stay broken. "The truth," she told them one afternoon, "is like light through stained glass. It might take time, but it always finds its way through." 1 year later, Margaret stood at a community ceremony in Brighton Town Hall. Oliver watched proudly as she accepted an award for service to the elderly. She spoke simply. "When someone steals from you, don't answer with anger. Answer with truth. Anger fades, truth endures." The applause was gentle, heartfelt. Outside, the sea breeze lifted her hair. For the first time in years, Margaret Ellis felt light. Truth, she thought, doesn't shout. It waits until the world is finally quiet enough to hear it.